Hello and welcome, I'm Jaga and this is my first review. Today I will be spotlighting a really underrated Sega title called Outrigger, released in arcades in 1999, but I'll be showing the port to Dreamcast in 2001. All footage is recorded using composite into a cheap capture device. Before I begin, I just need to say, I love Unreal Tournament. I have spent more hours on this single game than any other in my life. Why? Because it's probably the single best realized multiplayer FPS I have ever encountered. It has a ridiculous number of features and wacky fun to be had. But believe it or not, much of my time was spent offline, in bot matches. You see, I did not grow up with regular access to the internet, but it's still one of the games that gave me a similar adrenaline-fueled experience. Perfect Dark, Time Splitters, Quake 3, these are all iconic games and all had bot matches and I greatly enjoyed them. But most people don't know that even Sega had their hand at making a multiplayer first-person arena shooter. In '99, the same year as Quake 3 and Unreal Tournament no less. Let's watch the intro real quick, shall we? Kinda makes you think more of a James Bond movie, doesn't it? And look at the GTA Price is Right font. I find this very misleading. In fact, the whole setup of the game, according to the manual, is that you're training for some kind of counter-terrorist strike force called Visitaria. But there's absolutely zero real storyline progression in this game, so it doesn't really matter. You get a couple different options in this game, but most of this footage is from the Versus mode. I do want to briefly go over the different modes. There is the arcade mode, which is similar of course to the original arcade game, which is set up kinda like a series of training missions. You choose your tier of difficulty from one of 4 choices: preparatory, novice, intermediate, and advanced, and each one has its own set of challenges. But most of the time it's simple deathmatch, but sometimes you have specific objectives like shooting stationary targets. The mission mode is a bit more expanded. There is a concurrent set of 15 missions for one player only, separated into 3 sets of difficulties. Sometimes it's your normal point match, but it does mix things up a bit. There are missions where mines are scattered throughout the level and you must carefully find and shoot them from a distance within the time limit. If you run into them, you might die instantly. These can be fairly challenging. Other times you actually fight bosses unique to the normal enemies. This mode is the only way to unlock all of the weapons, characters, and maps in the game, so it's recommended to try and complete it. Thankfully, it's really not too difficult, especially compared to another Sega game, Alien Front Online. We of course have the Versus mode. This is like your normal instant action mode where you choose your type of match, up to 4 players or bots, a map, and have fun blasting everyone away. These bots can provide a real challenge if you set them to random and bump their AI level to 3. This is probably where you'll spend most of your time. There's of course the obligatory network mode, but obviously the official servers have been long taken down. I wish I could have experienced that back in the day, but as I said before, I didn't have internet, or a Dreamcast for that matter. I believe there are ways to play it online these days, but I've not experienced that. Finally, we have Character Edit, which I really hoped would be a chance to customize the look of my own cute counter-terrorist and dress them up, but unfortunately it's merely a way to customize the preset loadout and control settings. You can change your color though. Now, as for the obligatory elephant in the room, the controls and design. How does Sega's foray into FPS really play, especially compared to the ports of Quake 3 and UT99 also on Dreamcast? Well, the original arcade version had a very unique control scheme using a joystick and a trackball or eyeball for moving and aiming. I cannot comment on that as I only saw the game once in the wild. The Dreamcast version does also allow you to use the official Dreamcast mouse and keyboard. The Dreamcast is notorious for only having one stick, so FPS games aren't as simple as on modern consoles. However, I found the controller scheme D1 on the gamepad to be very playable. This uses the face button to move and the stick to aim. And overall, the game is just much easier to play than Quake 3 or UT99 with a gamepad. There's not even enough buttons on the Dreamcast controller to use the secondary fire and jump in UT99 effectively without fumbling around. This isn't just due to the simpler controls, however, but the overall design. First off, Outrigger on Dreamcast runs at right around 60 FPS most of the time, whereas the ports of Quake 3 and UT noticeably chug along and have a hard time, especially when there's a lot going on, and that can mean a lot to playability in these sort of games. Unfortunately, there's only up to 4 players or bots in this game compared to up to 8 in the port of UT, but the maps are designed around it, they're not too big, and you usually never feel like there's too much empty space before you find someone to fight. Some maps are absolutely gorgeous too, Oedo and Water Sanctuary being some of my favorites. Some maps also have a dark version where it's a bit harder to see your enemies until you're right next to them. And the accompanying soundtrack, while not composed by Alexander Brandon, is still quite exciting and welcome to hear. Outrigger also has some core unique differences in gameplay. Instead of a normal deathmatch, in this game we have a point match, which reminds me of Thief mode from Time Splitters. When you kill your opponent you get 1 point, and they drop a coin, and if you collect it you get another point. But your opponents can also steal those coins. Headshots are worth more points, and you lose several points for killing yourself or your teammates. There is also a time match that does away with the coins, but I found the coins to be a fun addition. There's many different weapons in the game, but they fall into just 3 types, or slots, during gameplay. Bullet weapons like UMPs and assault rifles, grenade weapons or mines, and rocket or sniper weapons. Before a match, you can choose a pre-made character with their own loadout, or choose your own, but you can only have one of each category of weapon. There's only one kind of ammo pickup and it reloads only your currently selected weapon. The rapid-fire bullet weapons are relatively weak and take a lot of time to kill someone on their own, but the trick is that they can actually shoot down rockets that are fired at you. Rockets also aren't always one-shot weapons, sometimes requiring 2 or 3 shots to take down an opponent. Some grenades can attach themselves to walls or be mines disguised as health and coins, so it becomes a rock-paper-scissors game at times, based on what your opponent might be using. There's also special timed weapon pickups like flamethrowers and proton torpedoes that spawn in the levels. The thermography power-up will show you where your opponents are in the level through walls. There's also an Outrigger logo in each level that you usually have to do some careful jumping to get to, that rewards you with extra firepower. I won't say it's the most well-balanced game, and it doesn't have the calculated Pierce design that Quake 3 has, but it certainly tries to do its own thing. And overall, I think if you only have a Dreamcast or you have friends over, it's a better console experience. UT and Quake were designed for PCs, and that's where they should be experienced. Sega were able to take that idea and make it more friendly for an arcade environment, and the fact that it came out the same year is mind-blowing. Yes, there's an option to switch to third person, but it's quite awkward to be honest. It's clear what this was designed to be, and I find it extremely disappointing that both Sega and the Dreamcast had to fail shortly after this, dooming any chance at an expanded sequel, because as it is, it's nowhere near as feature-rich as my beloved Unreal Tournament, and feels like merely a template to what could have been a better successor. But maybe that's casting too many dreams, huh? Until next time, I'm Draga, and thank you for watching.